To the hearing, she was paid by Stephen Mather, who was a promoter of preservation everywhere from Chicago, and she sat down and she listened. All right, this is a good argument, this isn't a good argument. Concentrate on the beauty. Concentrate, she told Muir, on making sure you talk about parks should not be invaded. Once this starts, who knows what will happen. No park is safe. Concentrate on the other sources. Get an engineer. Start proving that there are other sources. Don't just rely on San Francisco's material. And man, she just drumbeat a whole message back to the West Coast. So now everyone started to think, well, we need to organize. And it was the first time that all preservation organizations actually started to speak as one voice, that they all chimed in on Hetch Hetchy, and Congress was listening. And then, my goodness, there was another election. And Garfield was out. President William Howard Taft was in. And his person would be Richard Ballinger, not well known for his preservationist views. He was more of a laissez-faire, a guy that just believed that things should happen the way they're going to happen with private industry. But when it came to parks, both of them were different. And the second big thing that the preservationists learned is if you get people there, if they can see it, if they can experience it, if they can be part of it, then they're not learning about it secondhand. It's part of them. And so both Taft and Ballinger were guided into Hetch Hetchy. And guess who was their guide? John Muir. Not a bad choice. Look and see and feel and listen and they loved every single minute of it. And indeed, whether they were converted or not, they were politicians. They didn't say, but it was clear that they were moved and tremendously impressed with the beauty of the valley. And so the preservationists really started working. They started making sure they had all the arguments. They made sure that they had pamphlets. They made sure they had all kinds of mailing lists ready to go. And they used this time in between to think, okay, we need a strategy. We need a strategy. What do we do? What about if we approve Lake Elmore and we approve Cherry Creek? There's enough water there for San Francisco for a century. But we do that only if they take Hetch Hetchy out of the permit. What do you think? And so they all began to speak that line. Even the Commonwealth Club of San Francisco said, well, that sounds like a reasonable idea. It's a win-win. I mean, we get all the water that we need, and we don't invade a park, and they get the park, and we don't have any problem with that. Sounds like a good deal. And we'll end this silly controversy. And San Francisco newspapers were furious. Oh, what they did to Muir. They went ahead and they lampooned him like crazy. They dressed him up as a woman. And they started saying, all you preservationists are a bunch of women. And you're wearing dresses. And it's just a bunch of long-haired women, or you're short-haired women and long-haired men. That's the only constituency you have. You're just a bunch of sentimentalists. And every editorial just hounded and tried everything in the world to bastardize these people who were blocking progress from occurring. Well, it worked. There was enough information for Ballinger to look at and see, you know what, according to the information I have, it certainly looks like there's enough there in those two reservoirs so that Hetch Hetchy is not needed. San Francisco, I order you to show cause as to why Hetch Hetchy should not be deleted from the Garfield permit before I grant any permission for anything. It was 1910. Taft had just fired Gifford Pinchot because he was in a battle with Ballinger over control and over rights and over philosophy and over all kinds of land leases. And he couldn't have that in his administration. And the Sierra Club had finally come around to have a vote. 589 voted to save Hetch Hetchy in its natural state. 181 voted for the dam. And many quit on San Francisco's side. And many others stayed in the club to cause as much trouble as they could. First thing they were going to do was to censor. We're going to censor that whole leadership. We'll show the country that the Sierra Club has two minds, not just one. And so they had the Merchants Exchange building. They planned a secret meeting, and all they would need is a quorum. Well, Muir and Colby found out about it. I think it's time for a dinner. And so at the Poodle Dog restaurant, he invited all of his friends to dinner. And they came, the Mountaineers did. They poured into the Poodle Dog restaurant. And they ate and drank their fill. And then they marched down the street to the Merchant Exchange. And they overwhelmed the secret meeting. And there was no censure taking. You hacked the meeting, Muir! That's what you did! I didn't hack any meeting. I just hacked the Mountaineer stomachs. And that's what he did. And oh, it was a great victory. And so the hearings occurred. It was May 1910. Garfield, I can smell it, I can smell it, I can smell it. Everyone had great hope. Everyone was, this could be it. And so an engineer was hired. You know, the problem with fighting a battle like this is there isn't a whole lot of money for those that are defenders. But for those that are going to experience millions of dollars of material gain, there's always money. And San Francisco put all kinds of money into this. That's, you know, was their want. And the preservationists, most of the donations came from the people themselves, from Muir and McFarland and Colby and others. And so they sent Philip Haroun, an engineer, to the meeting, and Philip Haroun did a great job in showing that there are other sources and letting people know that the Hetch Hetchy is, you know, while it's a valuable source, you can get it in other ways. We need the power! You know, San Francisco had a plan. It isn't just the San Francisco anymore. No, we changed our minds. We want to create a water system for the entire Bay Area. We need that. One system for everyone. And in order to do that, we need time to prove to you that we can do that, and we need Hetch Hetchy in order to do that. It was a pivotal moment. And Ballinger blinked. I'll give you a year. You couldn't believe it. He was crestfallen. It was right there. A year. Oh. And of course, San Francisco went to work. They hired John R. Freeman. He was the most esteemed engineer in the United States. He was so erudite that when he would talk, people would hardly understand what he was saying, but he was so sure of himself that he must be right. And indeed, all the reports that he gave were so logical, and they were so clean and so illustrated and so neat. I mean, who could figure this stuff out? I mean, who could read it? We'll have to listen to him. Well, he went to work, and the Sierra Club went to work creating more links, creating, you know, trying to figure out new ways to get to people, because eventually this was headed for Congress, and they knew it. But who knows? Maybe they could stop. Well, they didn't know it, but Ballinger was getting ill with all the pressure from the controversy, and 2 months before the meeting, he retired. And so now we have a new Secretary of the Interior. His name was Walter Fisher. Wonderful guy, saw both sides, very well versed on it. I want to see it myself. So now a great meeting was held, and they had people from both sides going into the Hetch Hetchy Valley. Fisher was looking here. Go away, I want to walk. And he walked, and he came back refreshed, and he said, I've had a great walk, and it's helped me clear up a lot of things. And on the way out, one of the people, Robert Marshall, went over to Manson, the engineer from San Francisco, and said, you know, you want to ask him about this valley below Hetch Hetchy? The Poupinat Valley? Yeah. You know, maybe you want to dam that too, you know? And think of the extra water? I don't know. You want to ask him? Mr. Secretary, what if we dam this too? And Fisher turned to him and looked at him and said, and tell me, what other valleys in Yosemite do you think is going to be San Francisco's desire to absorb? Never heard a word from Manson again. Well, the problem was Fisher knew that he was on shaky ground. No matter what he did, it was going to create a ballyhoo of a controversy. And even though he delayed it, Marks and Manson had a breakdown. He delayed it. The city needed more time for Freeman to do its report. He delayed it. Marks and Manson had another breakdown. And it was 2012. It was November when they finally had the hearing. I have to listen to the USGS. And the USGS, this was not the USGS, it was the Army Corps of Engineers. They didn't think about beauty. They weren't hired to take a look at any kind of cost of tourism. They didn't think of any loss to the park. They didn't think of any damage. Which is the best supply? Quality was the most abundant. It was the cleanest, even though the others were just as clean too. And it also was the cheapest, by $20 million. We recommend the quality. And the preservationists looked at each other, and there was nothing they could do. They had agreed this group would be the arbiter. And so, 1913, well, Fisher said, I can't make this decision, you have to go to Congress. And so once again, it started all over, but this time San Francisco's money, influence, power. There was a new administration. Taft, ran against Roosevelt as much as he ran against Woodrow Wilson. The two of them split the vote, and Wilson became the president. And who did he hire for his Secretary of the Interior? Franklin Lane, the former city attorney of the city of San Francisco. It didn't stop the preservationists from fighting, but they fought a good fight. In fact, there was a moment when it looked like maybe there was hope. When a man named Eugene Sullivan said, "The McKelvey, it's been told to San Francisco in a secret report because they buried it. Marks and Manson buried it. But it was a report showing that it was just the same quality. It was enough for San Francisco. They didn't need Hetch Hetchy. But my company," and of course he went through this big long pitch, "can you show us the report? Can you show us what your company will do?" Couldn't do it. John Freeman's report went to every single congressman. It was a 401-page document. It was bound. The whole first section of the book were pictures of all these lakes in Europe. See how pretty that lake is? And they were all full, of course, with no drawdown. Look at how wonderful. Look at people that are driving around the lake. Oh, look at that. They're picnicking here. Oh, isn't this a wonderful sight? Imagine yourself on a Sunday picnic. Oh, look at the alpine scenery. What do you mean this is going to destroy the beauty of Hetch Hetchy? A lake is going to enhance it. It's going to be better. And man, he did a good job with his pictures and photographs and slick paper and incredible expense account. He did a wonderful job. And the whole second half of the book was divided into 2 parts, going through every single source with his own data and his own material that the USGS didn't have any way to refute, saying every other source had a problem, except Hetch Hetchy, except the Tuolumne, except Cherry Creek and Lake Eleanor. And the last part was all about the wonderful gravity-feed aqueduct. It would be the greatest aqueduct in the world. And it would go 167 miles all the way from Hetch Hetchy to the San Francisco Bay region, where people everywhere will have it for all of their domestic needs and uses. San Francisco will be given its water after a long fight. And it was persuasive. So was the power argument. And the power that comes from Hetch Hetchy, why, it'll be public. A city will not be held at the mercy of a power company, which was, look at what they did to Niagara Falls. They're trying to stop Niagara Falls so a private power company can turn off the falls and turn on the falls, and we don't want that to happen here, said George Norris. We praise those of you who vote for this bill, because all of you will own the power, not a private company whose rates will put you in the poorhouse in no time at all. And so it passed. It passed the House, it passed the Senate, and Woodrow Wilson signed it on December 19th, 1913. Muir was crushed. It's so hard to lose such beautiful landscape gardens as the Hetch Hetchy. But I'm glad it's over. He was exhausted. He was sick. He was ill. He wrote his memoirs with the help of Laday and Marion Parsons about his Alaska trips, thinking of the old days. And he went down to see his grandchildren down in Daggett in the desert. And got caught in the rain, developed a chill, started to cough. Infection started to grow in his lungs. They rushed him to California Hospital here in Los Angeles and below. He didn't make it. There wasn't antibiotics in those days. And he died the day before Christmas in 1914. And so the world had lost the greatest spokesperson it had ever known. Spokesperson for the rocks, for the trees, for nature, for the soul of man, as much as anything. But they didn't forget what he was trying to accomplish. And many of those same people who voted for the Hetch Hetchy Act on the basis of the testimony, they then all band together and they decided, we need what Muir wanted, an organization that will direct the parks and defend it from this kind of thing from ever happening again. And so in 1916, the Organic Act was passed, and that was the creation of the National Park Service. And millionaire Stephen Mather walked into the office of Lane and started complaining, there's not even a desk, there's not even an office, there's not even a door. Who do I talk to? You. You be it. And so he became first director. And now the National Park Service had a voice. And next year you're going to hear a whole lot more of that as the beginning of a year-long celebration will occur right here in Berkeley and also up in the mountains, celebrating how that act happened. Just like we not celebrate, but remember what happened here. And so, well, that ends the major part of the story. But it really doesn't end the story at all. In a nutshell, briefly, how did San Francisco, what did it do with its permit? Well, first of all, it didn't have any money. It only sold $2 million in bonds, about $45 million, what was voted in 1910. And that $45 million in bonds was supposed to pay for the whole thing. And the mayor said, "You'll have your water in 5 years." Well, they just started building it a year before the 5 years was up. And by the time they got it done, well, they didn't get it done. They got Lake Eleanor done, then they ran into labor problems, and they ran into more money problems. Then they were trying to do this wonderful gravity-feed tunnel, and they were also trying to build the Lake Eleanor Dam. They were also trying to excavate all the rock. And maybe it's a good thing Muir wasn't around, because all that rock that was taken out of that little narrow little opening was dumped all over that beautiful meadow right in the middle of the Hetch Hetchy Valley. There's a few pictures. It makes it look like a big, giant gravel pit. Actually, it makes it look like the Secaucus stumps. Any of you from New Jersey know what I mean. Well, in any case, finally, the dam was started. And by 1923, 10 years after it had started, the dam was finished, but all the money was gone. There was nothing left to finish the aqueduct. There weren't any power lines. There was nothing. It was just done. And M.M. O'Shaughnessy said, "Well, you know how it is. All you got to do is just pass another bond issue. What are they going to do? You're halfway there. They're not going to be able to vote you out. They're not going to vote it down. They're going to finish it. You got it. So just get out there and do your work." So it was telling Mayor Rolfe to more. Well, they started calling him M.M. O'Shaughnessy, more money O'Shaughnessy, because San Francisco started realizing, wait a minute, how? They ended up going more and more and more in debt. And then they had to either use all the water from Spring Valley Waterworks first, before they could touch a drop of Hetch Hetchy water. How are we going to do that? There's there's 100 million acre feet right here, or 100,000 acre feet. It's going to take us years to do that. Well, I thought you were in desperate need. I thought you needed to do this all right away. Well, yes, but that means we got to buy it. Well, the act didn't tell them to buy it, but they knew they had to. So $41 million later, they bought the Spring Valley Waterworks for far more than they had negotiated with Spring Valley for years. And then what? Well, then power. How are we going to get the power? Well, the Raker Act. Let me just read this, because I think it's one of the most important passages that's going to affect the future and has affected the last 100 years. Because all the congressmen put this in, because this is how much they believe that the city should own its own power supply. Section 6. That the grantee is prohibited from ever selling or letting to any corporation or individual except a municipality or a municipal water district or irrigation district the right to sell or sublet the water or the electric energy sold or given to it or him by the said grantee, San Francisco, provided that the rights hereby granted shall not be sold, assigned, or transferred to any private person, corporation, or association, and in case of any attempt to so sell, assign, transfer, or convey, this grant shall revert to the government of the United States. Well, all this power was ready to be used. Millions of dollars of it. $5,000 a day to start with. And all that power was now strung through lines to Newark, right down here. But all the lines that go into the houses, the businesses, the cable cars, were owned by Pacific Gas and Electric, a private utility, not unlike Spring Valley Water Company. What are we going to do? Pacific Gas and Electric, we would like to buy your facility. Oh, really? We're not for sale. Well, how about we transfer our power through your lines? Distribute power through our lines? We don't do that. You can sell it to us, or you can build your own power line. San Francisco started saying, I hadn't thought of this at all. They hadn't thought 1 ounce about how they were going to do this. Or if they did, they certainly didn't take any action on it. And so here they were in 1925. What do we do? Well, they didn't want to lose $5,000 a day. Mayor Jim Rolfe was saying, use it or lose it. But we got to go to the federal government and get a delay. Well, they tried, but the government wasn't listening. So, on August 14, 1925, they sold the power through Pacific Gas and Electric. Total violation of the Rinker Act. And everybody didn't know what to do. Secretary of the Interior didn't know what to do. Various congressmen said, well, that's wrong, and they screamed and they yelled, but nothing happened. Nothing happened until 1933 when Harold Ickes became Secretary of the Interior. And Ickes was a curmudgeon, by a nice sense of the word. You did not try to bully Ickes, he bullied you. He was a tough guy. And he said, you either show me that you are going to buy Pacific Gas and Electric, or we are going to take back Hetch Hetchy, Moccasin Creek, and all the power lines. Well, what were they going to do? We got to pass another bond issue, that's what we got to do, so Shaughnessy. All right, Well, sure enough, the bond issue was offered, it failed. Offered again, it failed. Offered a third time, it failed. A fourth time, gee, the people of San Francisco love to spend money to get their water. They haven't even got their water yet. And sure enough, not one vote went through to get the power. And so San Francisco said, we're just going to do it this way because we don't have any other choice. And then Mather comes in, and he says, what about the tourism? What about the scenery? You haven't built a road. Mr. O'Shaughnessy, you put up a sign saying keep out. You have this big picture over here showing you, bragging to the press, how you're going to close half of Yosemite National Park. Not under my watch. And sure enough, Mather fought like the Dickens, and so did his undersecretary, Horace Albright. And both of them made sure that San Francisco did something. They built a road at least, a little small campground, but you couldn't touch the water, you'd pay a $1,000 fine. Gates kept getting put up, and the Park Service kept tearing them down. And yet there's this huge lodge right up there to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. So it was done like they owned the place, as one critic said. This is our park, but what have we done? And even those who supported the city. Well, maybe the biggest coup was this. San Francisco said this is going to be needed. We need all this water. We need Hetch Hetchy because we're going to make an entire bay-wide regional water supply like Rome. And the people, good people of Oakland and Berkeley and Richmond. And how much is this going to cost us? Well, if you give us the money now, it'll cost you this much. But if you wait, we're out of money. It's going to cost you a lot more. Wait a minute, you're dictating to us now that you're going to be the boss and you're going to charge us and we don't know when we're going to get the supply. It's been almost 10 years. This was 1924. It's been 10 years and you don't have a drop. And so what they decided to do, the good people of Oakland and Berkeley and Richmond and the surrounding East Bay cities, was say, we don't have to play second fiddle to San Francisco. We can do it better. And they did. They went to that same McKelvey water supply and they created a whole water system of pure, clean Sierra water. And they piped it over here to the East Bay. They did it in 5 years. They did it for $39 million. And they had their own system. And San Francisco was going, wait a minute, you can't do that. Oh yeah, we did that. And you still don't have a drop of water. 1934, the water arrived in Canyon Springs. Finally, it was pushed through the Coast Range at the cost of 12 lives and another $10–15 million. The total cost of the Hetch Hetchy system to that point was $102 million. 45, and you'll have it in 5 years. And that's just the beginning, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing. All you need to know is that the battle between Ickes and the city got so virulent that the Supreme Court weighed in and said, you violated Section 6, San Francisco, and the government now has the right to take back its reservation. That was all ready to happen in November of 1941. And then December 7th occurred, and all bets were off. Saved by the earthquake, saved by the war. How many other breaks does a group get? And so all the excess electricity went to power the aluminum plant. And after it was done, the Modesto and Turlock Irrigation District said they'd buy the power, and so all the power was still getting distributed to Pacific Gas and Electric, but a Congress Secretary of the Interior made a deal in 1945, and that's kind of the way it's been with adjustments here and there, except for a $4.6 billion retrofit, because San Francisco never took care of the aqueduct and it's falling apart and it needed to be upgraded. So here we are, and people are saying, well, it's a done deal. Oh, why should we bother? And then a guy named Ron Good. He'd been working with David Brower, he'd been working with the Environmental Defense Fund, he'd been trying to figure out, you know, how he could do something to really make a difference. And so he turned to Hetch Hetchy. I mean, like I was telling you about me, he had his own conversion experience with Hetch Hetchy, just as deep and as strong as anyone else, who's become a lover of the place forever. And so, he talked to a lot of people, he got some ideas, he got some support, and he started a group called Restore